Letish, Latasha, Lucretia, Becky, Karen, and Amy. When I say those two sets of names, some different images may pop into your mind. Well, today we are going to talk about Amy's and Allies, reflections towards actionable change. This has become a double shutdown at this point. As you know, we've been shut down due to the COVID pandemic, but at this point, we are shut down because of the unrest that has happened in many major cities due to the death on camera of George Floyd. This is early morning, and I don't know what today's headlines will bring. Basically, how did we get here? Trevor Noah, who is a comedian and somewhat of a political voice, has a really good 18-minute video that would be really beneficial for you to watch. So I'll make sure that's posted with this video. He's also written a book about race relations that I think is amazing because it gives us Americans another view about race relations from an outsider who in some ways shares some of our concerns. In addition to the isolation of being shut down, there have been a couple of other events. The killing of Ahmaud Arbery and the killing of Breonna Taylor in her sleep in her home. And now the weather is getting warmer, so it's almost like a perfect storm to deal with what one of my college friends calls Rona and racism. I am reminded of Colin Kaepernick's peaceful protest of taking a knee and just remembering how upset everyone was because he interrupted the football season. Now, not only are we interrupted due to COVID, we are now interrupted to address the underlying pandemic of racism. If we leave from this moment and do not do anything differently, we will be back here again. What's happening in our country is kind of like an infection. You can put a little Neosporin or something on it, patch it up, but if you truly do not take the antibiotic to kill the infection or the bacteria or whatever, it's gonna come back, and it could come back worse, and you might end up having to have a surgery to cut it out. So at this point, we are at a stage where we need to do something. As an assistant professor and also as a leader of professional development in equity, I've had to have a lot of different conversations that were difficult. And I always like to provide folks with norms. And one of my norms that I'm real serious about is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So the things that I raised in this video or in anything that I'm doing may make you feel uncomfortable, but you have to sit with that so that you can do something differently. Most of the conversations that I have with folks, they are well-intentioned people. They want the best. They don't want to be a part of a system that is systemically oppressing anyone. Some of the things that I might say might rub up against your core belief in your ability to be a good person. After the protests die down, because they will, we will be forced to go back to our spaces that could be work or our communities, and we're going to have to deal with ourselves and how we deal and interact with others. That's why I want to talk a little bit about Amy, as in Amy Cooper, the lady who was in Central Park last Monday and had an encounter with Christian Cooper, no relations. Basically what happened was they were in a part of the park where people would bird watch and just enjoy the peacefulness of the park. You're not supposed to have your dog off a leash, but from my understanding, Amy had her dog off the leash. Christian asked her to put the dog back on the leash. Christian is an African American man who went to Harvard. But anyhow, Amy was very resistant and defiant with Christian because she didn't feel that Christian had a right to tell her to put the dog on a leash. So Christian offers the dog a treat, which makes the dog want to come to Christian, and that typically would make the owners put the dog back on a leash. Well, this freaked Amy out and she went berserk. She even takes a step forward towards Christian and he begins to videotape this whole thing, and he's telling her, don't come near me, don't come near me. What makes the situation so abhorrent is that she begins to tell him that she is going to call the police on him, an African American man. She even steps back. He's very far from her. She goes into whole thing, just elevating it, being a drama queen, doing the whole thing. Amy knew that she had the police protection of her whiteness. And when she began to yell and scream that she was in danger, they would come to protect her. And we all know this. Those of us of color, we live it and we see it. But to actually just see it play out on the camera for the world to see it, we all cringed because it was almost like a mother or father who actually has a favorite daughter or son. We all know it, but like we just don't say it out loud. So remember at the beginning when I said all the names, when I saw that her name was Amy and I saw what happened, I know that I made prejudgments about who Amy was. I assumed that she was conservative and may be sympathetic to a MAGA cause or may have voted a particular way politically. However, Nyla Barton of The Independent reported on Amy's likely political ideology. She found that Amy had contributed politically to candidates like Barack Obama, Pete Buttigieg, and John Kerry. So then actually Amy probably identifies as a liberal. So here is the moral irony. You may have voted for a black man from Harvard for president, but you called the police on a black man from Harvard for not wanting to leash your dog. Now, Amy did apologize, and even though her actions were racist, she herself was not a racist. Lots of complexity to be unpacked. So the other day I was scrolling down my Facebook timeline and I came across a post by one of my favorite critical educators and community activists, Angela Harris.
Malcolm X said, "The white liberal differs from the white conservative only in one way. The liberal is more deceitful than the conservative. Both want power, but the white liberal is the one who has perfected the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor."
So there is this idea that there is this conservative and then there's a liberal approach to supporting people of color or other marginalized groups. Sometimes liberals are painted as friends of marginalized people. You might consider yourself an ally. What I want to do is give you the context of how I have defined what an ally is.
An ally is someone who has privilege in what is identified as an oppressive system or situation, who stands alongside and advocates on behalf of oppressed individuals or people. Some examples of an ally would include a natural-born U.S. citizen who advocates for humane and dignified treatment of undocumented citizens, or a man advocating for equal pay for women, a white person understanding and using privilege to create spaces and voice for people of color, or a cisgender or straight person advocating for LGBTQ rights and inclusivity.
I have been both the oppressed, but also an ally to marginalized groups. However, as a Black woman, that intersection has afforded me quite a bit of more thoughtful and intentional navigation through systemic oppression. And having had people who posed as allies be there for you, but then not there for you and easily able to switch back and forth has been very traumatic for me.
So, this is what I posted in response to Angela's Malcolm X quote. I said, "This has been an interesting ride for me, and I think I'll do a video. I have been hurt and crushed the hardest by people that actually understood the oppression I experienced. I have given some folks an up close, personal view and watched them betray me when I called them in about their behavior. They knew how to shield themselves in their privilege. They knew how to silently dare me to speak against what they had done to me personally. It was easy for them to slip back across that line without being detected by unconscious white folks and all of the people of color who have witnessed all of their good deeds and only thought well of them. Yes, I need some therapy behind this quote."
That role of ally can get extremely complicated at times because you actually understand what's happening. You are woker than most. So when you know about oppression, what are the ways that you use what you know to push your own agenda, to control a situation or a narrative? I'm not sure who actually said it, but Barack Obama said it in one of his speeches. He said there is a gap between our highest ideas and our current reality. So it's one thing to understand systemic oppression, but then there's another not to do anything about it and to even use the systemic oppression to your benefit. Do you learn the lingo, talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk? In my 25-year plus career, I know I don't look that old, but 25 years in the game, I have come in contact with blatant racism. But what I am talking about is very undetectable because we are not tuned into seeing the small things that could lead up to a day like Amy Cooper had, which I arguably will say that is probably one of the worst days of her life. But if we don't take care of understanding and being more self-reflective of what we are and who we are, we will have an Amy Cooper day. Now, let me be clear. In the 25 plus years, I've come across a number of Amy's, and I definitely don't have time to discuss the intricate details of those particular situations. These allied Amy's did the work. Many of them read the books, they went to workshops, they listened to people of color, they did the things that they needed to do to understand the experience. They pushed back on their family and friends when they would say inappropriate racist things. These are people that might be asked to leave the holiday table because of the kind of conversations that families typically might have in the absence of people of color. However, that does not mean that you stop at some activities, some reflections around self-awareness. It is an ongoing process to unlearn ideology that has been oppressive and that we ourselves may have demonstrated towards others. In closing, you may ask yourself, where do I begin? I don't want to be an allied Amy. I want to actually make some sustainable change. You've got to do your own work. You've got to read books. You need to attend workshops. You need to be able to listen without rebuttal to the real experiences of people of color on a daily basis. You have to practice decentering your experience and listen to others and take that in. There is lots of work to do. James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click like and share. Thank you so much for listening.